slowly rolling. So, Philip, what's sustainability for you?
Yeah, so we treat sustainability as if it's something of our own invention. But for me, sustainability is something that exists in the world. There is a law in nature which delivers harmony and creates balance, and everything lives according to its own need, and in proportion with everything else that lives. So for me, we have to find that law of sustainability in existence. It's not something, an intellectual construction.
And why is it relevant nowadays to find that law in nature and to build on it?
Yes, so increasingly we live according to our own intellectual pattern of what exists in the world, and we try and impose that reality on the world. And I think it's vitally important that we return to this sense that we're living by the grace of God, as it were. We're living in a world that has its own balance, its own law, and that we have to get back into balance with the world, with nature, and find our own place that can coexist with all other life and, create a harmonious universe. Well, we've kind of pushed things. So I first sort of became aware of sustainability in the 1980s when I was working in a computer office, and we were treating the world like it was nothing. And one day I had this sort of awakening of seeing the moon rising on a dark night, and this kind of law of beauty and harmony of the universe was then apparent, and that we were completely negating that law by our own practices and our own imposition of order and construction on the world. And at that time I felt something drastic needed to change, and from that point on we've only made the situation worse, and we've pushed the world to a real point where we have to choose. We cannot go on this line of increased progress and technology and ease of living. So now we've got to a point where it's a vital, that this choice is vital and alive. And I think everybody feels it in their lives, that we cannot go on like this. Conformity is telling us we can, but inside us we know that something new must happen. Well, at that time, when I was working as a computer programmer and I had this realization, the first thing I did was leave my job, and I went to live in the mountains in the Alps for 2 years. And my impulse in doing this was to trust to experience, to tell me individually what is a good way for me to live. And so I lived for 2 years in the mountains, and I understood something about there is a balance between the inner and the outer. Even though we're taught about facts and knowledge as if the inner world doesn't matter, when you actually pay attention to the inner world, you find that there is a balance, that there is a place for that inner world, and in fact that inner world can be a guide to how we live and how we create order through that experience. So since then I've been doing many things, so sometimes programming for a couple of years, but also writing and teaching at the Schumacher College, which has been a really rich place of exploring how we can go beyond this notion of science as something outside us, and how we can incorporate this inner transformation, this sense of experience, and finding our place through experience in the world. And at the moment I'm trying to apply that learning to many outside projects, so in health, in water, in mental health, in farming. And so I believe that that balance of wholeness and detail, of science and spirit, can help us in doing many tasks. It's not just a knowledge that we have that's kind of an understanding, it's also a practice. Yeah, so especially in my experience at Schumacher College, so hundreds of students pass through the college. Some are just graduates, some come from with a whole career behind them, or they're at a point of life where they feel they need to change. And so first of all, it's often a slowing down, that we're so busy in our modern world that we just go from one thing to another. And before we know it, you know, we've started a job, we've had a career, we've had children, and we've retired. But first is kind of slowing down and trying to see, well, what is my potential? Can I use my gifts for something more valuable in the world than just running an office or helping some system to go, you know, to cycle around? And when you give people that space and you listen to them and you listen to what they're really passionate about, you often find there's a complete secret garden or secret landscape under their outer personality. And when you get into that kind of secret inner landscape, you find there are amazing paths leading through it. They're an amazing artist, they're an amazing filmmaker. And so when you begin to cultivate those skills and pay attention to them, then amazing things come out, and people who've been to the college have gone on to do amazing things in the world in completely unique ways. And once you've awakened that garden and people start tending that inner garden, then incredible things start growing there that you wouldn't expect. And for me, this is a kind of metaphor that if we can start paying attention to that inner space ourselves as a culture, then what can grow there is infinite in potential. Well, I think we have a huge inertia in our society, that kind of and a fear in a way that we've had such a secure and easy path the last few hundred years, with very little disease, with opportunities to find our own way in education, in career, and you know, we all kind of hold on, are attached to that. We all think as humanity we're modern, we're beyond the problems of primitive societies. You know, we've reached a sophistication and an intellectual supremacy over the world that kind of defines us uniquely. And whenever you try to do something new, you hit against that inertia, that somehow you need an experience of falling off that cliff, falling off that feeling that everything's going to be done for us, that we're just living in this time of prosperity and wealth and personal security. I think in every story, something has to wake you up. Something has to see beyond the world we've constructed. And at the moment, it's isolated individuals which are doing that. But the question is, how is that going to happen to us as a culture? And you know, more and more it seems that we're concentrating or converging on that question, that the politicians we're voting in are increasing the intensity of that question of who are we beyond our own constructed world. So the challenge is to meet that convergence of all questions on this sort of central question of who we are, and to do so with an open heart and an open spirit, and in so that we can overcome that inertia, that people are unwilling to give up that very comfortable lifestyle we've had. Yes, I think if you look at the history of civilizations, then there's always been this kind of tension between the inner power of the civilization and a kind of greater truth, a greater justice, a greater power of light, you could say. And if you look to old cultures, or if you look to dramatic moments where civilizations have fallen, then you find this same pattern of an increasingly concentrated power that kind of gets completely arrogant and headstrong in its power, and that this civilization then kind of hits head on with this greater truth, which then re-establishes its order and its balance. So that law of balance and kind of reasserts itself, and humanity kind of makes another step forward on its path. And I think there are many people who are on that journey, and that's why I call them synapses. So there are many people trying to look for what is our place in the universe, what is our place in this world. And when they come together, then there's that aha moment of illumination, where there's a new insight, like a new thought in the mind, where all the synapses suddenly synchronize in a new picture, in a new vision. And so Global Synapses is holding a space for this process to happen, which I think is a very innate and natural process.